Hey guys, Uncommon Ramen here. If you can tell, my voice is completely messed up. You can also probably tell that it's been several weeks before I've posted any new material. I got sick like 2.5 weeks ago and actually lost my voice completely, so all of that is related. I learned a few lessons there. Definitely going to try and make sure I have some backup content just in case I lose my voice again. But I also realized that it's been 3 weeks and I was going to wait till my voice came back to try and do something, but it looks like it's going to take some time and I kind of don't want to wait. So, with that being said, I want to jump into, yes, Boss Monster again. But this time I kind of want to do a quick rundown of how this game works. I had a subscriber who asked, I know it's getting really close to Christmas. Again, I got really sick. I wanted to do this earlier so that you could see how it worked. Hopefully you see this in time and it helps you decide whether you want to pick it up or not. So, there's a couple things I want to go over really quick here before we get into the actual how-to of this game. So we'll go over the layouts of each of the cards. This is a spell card. You'll have your name, your art, and then you'll have the abilities here. Down here you'll see this little hammer. This hammer indicates the phase in which the spell itself can be used. In this particular case, it's an adventure phase, whereas this one is either the build phase or the adventure phase. And then you'll have other spells that can only be used during your build phase, which is indicated by just that hammer. That is how the spells work. I'll go into obviously greater detail as we go through the walkthrough of how the game plays. Your next cards are going to be your bosses. Obviously, again, name, artwork, level up ability, which happens the first time your dungeon hits a full 5 rooms. XP, which is used to determine first player, and then symbol type for what they would initially be able to bait into a dungeon. And then after that, you're going to have your ordinary heroes. Name, art, little ability, how much HP the hero has. The star indicates that this hero has to be in any player range. So if you're playing with 2 players, this guy's going to be there, 3 players, so on and so forth. And the blood drop is a wound should he make it through the dungeon fully through. And again, you'll see the star here, but right here you'll see a 2-player icon indicator, which means that this guy is used in 2-player and on, whereas this guy is only used in 4-player games. So if you're not playing a 4-player game, you're actually going to remove him from the hero deck. And you can kind of see this guy's 5+. With every bit of content you can actually play, I believe, up to 6 players. I'd have to double check that though. I wouldn't recommend it either. Then we go into the epic heroes. You will only ever start adding epic heroes once the ordinary heroes have been completely gone through. And it's the same thing: name, art, ability, or just like text, how much HP, how many players you'd use this with, and then this is how many wounds he'd be worth if he made it all the way through. And all of these guys are obviously worth more wounds, so you don't want these guys to live. And they actually, consequently, are also worth more souls at the end as well. And you'll notice on the back, I'm sorry I didn't show this earlier, heroes are worth 1, epic heroes are worth 2. Now, should you have extra content you are also going to have items. If you only have the base sets and none of the expansions, then you won't have any items at all. These are kind of optional if you want to play with them, and they have their upsides and their downsides for both sides, the hero and the boss. Name, artwork. This is the ability that you would have if you defeated the hero that was holding the item. This is the ability the item has while it's being held by a hero, and these items will go to the first hero in town that matches its symbol, much like when you're baiting a hero to a dungeon. Again, totally optional, you don't have to use them, and if you have only the core sets, you won't even have any items to begin with. And then last but not least, the meat of the game, the biggest deck you'll have, and that is going to consist of all your room cards. There's several different types of room cards. There are trap rooms, as you can see here. There are monster rooms, which you can see here. And then there are advanced monster rooms. And as you probably have already guessed, there are advanced trap rooms, which I can't seem to find at the moment. Here we go. Advanced trap room. So we'll go over a rundown of those really quickly. Here is the name, artwork, ability of the room, how much damage it does, and the symbol that it adds to your dungeon. So for the basic rooms, trap rooms tend to have an interesting ability, but don't always do a whole lot of damage. Whereas monster rooms usually, in this case it's not true, usually do a lot of damage but don't really have really cool abilities. But in this case, this particular monster room actually is just here to give you versatility in what you are able to lure into your dungeon, and more so what you're able to overlay this with. And when you're playing, you're going to be putting your rooms down in front of you as you build them. You can choose to overlay any room on top of that room to kind of replace that room, as long as it's a basic room. So for instance, I could take this basic trap room and put it over top of this, and then when the build phase is over, I'd flip it over, and now instead of having the original effect, it is a dark laboratory, and I wouldn't get anything but the benefit from the dark laboratory. Advanced rooms are a little bit different in that they can only be overlaid on top of a symbol that exists on the card that it's trying to replace. So in this particular case, because the sword symbol shows up there, I can use this advanced monster room to overlay on top of that, and then boom. Advanced rooms cannot be put in an empty spot. They always have to replace an older room. So the object of the game is to basically build up room cards with symbols to attract as many heroes from town to come into your dungeon and potentially get killed because you're trying to collect their souls. So the first player to get to 10 souls is going to be the winner. However, if at any point in time you get to 5 wounds, then you lose. You're obviously going to start out by shuffling all the decks, making sure that you've already taken out all the cards that only belong in certain player count games. So if you have cards in there that you would only see during a 4-player game and you have 3 players, you need to remove all those. And once you've done all that, you shuffle all the cards, and then randomly deal out 1 boss to each player. And you'll notice there are a ton of bosses. each with their own XP and each with their own unique level up ability. It's important that you randomize these because I would imagine that there are certain people who would pick the same boss over and over again. So it is important that you randomize these. Once you have picked your boss, really sorry guys. Once you have picked your boss, the player with the most XP, as far as bosses are concerned, is going to become the first player. And then everybody is going to draw 5 room cards and 2 spell cards. One very important thing to understand is that you only ever draw the 2 spell cards the entire rest of the game unless a card specifically tells you to draw more spells. So you don't, every round you don't draw more spell cards. So the spell cards are probably something that you want to be careful about how you use because they are very limited. Once you've drawn your opening hand of 5 room cards and 2 spell cards, you're going to choose one of the basic rooms in your hand, and then you're going to place it face down in front of you to the left of your boss. Once everyone has placed their room card face down, everyone will flip their room card face up. It is important that you play the room cards face down. Much like insider trading, if somebody saw your room card before they placed their own room card, they could tailor how they play their game. So it is important that it is always face down until everyone has placed, and once everyone has placed and flipped, it is done. It's a done deal. You cannot back up. So you would play with one room card ready to go, and then you would populate the heroes. And that basically is, you're going to take 2 heroes from the hero deck and you're going to place them face up on the table. If, for whatever reason, a hero stays back in town, if by ties or their symbols simply didn't show up in anybody's dungeon, you are still going to populate the field with 2 more heroes on the next turn, which means there's a potentially large amount of heroes that can sit in town, assuming that they don't get assigned to a dungeon. So once you've got the heroes placed, and once you've got your room and your boss placed, the beginning of your turn is going to go to drawing a room card, and then we go into what is called the build phase, at which point you're going to take one of the room cards in your hand and you're going to place it face down either on top of your old room or to the left of your old room. Again, if it is an advanced room, it has to be placed on top of your old room, and more importantly, it has to match at least one of the symbols that is on that room. In this particular case, there is only one symbol on here, so I'd only ever be able to place a room there that had a book on it. Just like the first round of placing your rooms in the dungeon, after everyone has placed their rooms face down, everyone will flip their rooms face up, and this will become their new dungeon. As I had mentioned earlier, the first time you have placed 5 rooms in your dungeon, which is the cap, you can only ever have 5 rooms in your dungeon, you're going to use the level up ability on your boss. Again, it is only the first time, so you will not get to use the ability multiple times. Once the build phase is over, we move into the bait phase. And the bait phase is pretty simple. You're going to look at the symbol for the hero, and then you're going to tally up the number of times a symbol like that shows up in each of the dungeons, and the person who has the most of that symbol will bait the hero to the entrance of their dungeon. And any ties will keep the hero back at home. Once everybody has been baited to their dungeon, the hero is going to slowly but surely go through the dungeon one room at a time. Only one hero will go into a dungeon at any given time, so one hero has to go in fully and either be killed or get through alive before the next hero will enter. And we'll look here, this hero has 6 HP. When he enters this room, the little black heart thing there says he loses 3. So he's got 3 HP left. This also says give every other monster room in your dungeon +1. Unfortunately, I don't have another monster room in here. He'll hit this room and he'll lose 1 HP, which will put him down to 2. And then, of course, he'll go to my boss and he'll beat me, and he'll end up being a wound. You can also tell that this right here was an illegal placement because it's an advanced monster room, but this was just for example's sake. And also, if you read this card, it says when you build it, you get to draw 2 spell cards, then discard a spell card. So this is an example of a card that will allow you to draw spell cards, which you would normally not be able to do. You keep doing the after the baiting phase, the adventure phase, which was the hero going through your dungeon, until either until you've taken 5 wounds or one person has 10 souls. There's 2 ways to win, obviously, having 10 souls and being the last man standing. You will only ever start using epic heroes, like I said earlier, once all of the basic heroes have been gone through. And there's a lot in here, but again, you tailor it based on the number of players that are playing. At the end of the turn, obviously, you're going to reactivate any activated rooms, and if you'll notice, none of these actually have an activate ability. There are rooms in here that require you to quote-unquote activate them in order for them to work. So you reactivate them. You're going to check to see who is dead versus you know, who has how many souls, and then you're going to start over from the very beginning. The spells, as I mentioned earlier, have timing. Like, for instance, this spell can only be used during the building phase. So if you're in the building phase, which is where you're putting the rooms face down, that would be when you'd play something like this, versus something like this that is only played during the adventure phase. And like I had mentioned earlier, the adventure phase is where the hero is going through your dungeon. That is when you'd use a spell like this. And alternatively, there are spells in here that can be used during either of those phases. And the spells range from being able to buff heroes to being able to make it easier to build rooms and so on and so forth. The timing is up to you for when you want to play these. They are limited to whenever you can draw them. I showed you a room just a minute ago that actually allowed you to draw extra room cards. Extra spell cards, but they're few and far between. So, you know, use them as you would use them with discretion, I guess. That is Boss Monster, essentially. There's nothing really more to it except the items. The difference with the items when you add them is that after you have flipped over your face-up heroes, you're going to flip over one item. You're going to check which type of hero it'll attach to. In this particular case, it'll attach to any hero, and then attach it to the hero that it needs to be attached to, and that's kind of where it ends. Once a hero with an item has gone through the dungeon, let's say they live when they go through the dungeon, you're simply going to discard the item. However, if you manage to kill the hero and get the souls for the hero, then you will get the item, and there's a little special ability on all the items for the boss. You can only ever have one item at any given time, so if you have another hero going through the dungeon and he has an item and he's going to die, it would behoove you to use the current item you have just so you can actually store the next item. Or again, if the item that the other hero is holding isn't something that you're all that interested in, then I guess you could hold on to the item you have. But just be aware that you can only have one item at any given time. These items will only show up in tools of hero kind and implements of destruction. And I think there are a few items that come with crash landing, just to add the laser pistol symbol. But other than that, like I said, in the core sets, they don't show up. And they are completely optional. They add a little bit more difficulty if you think that the heroes are too easy to beat. But you don't need them. I wanted to do a playthrough, but I realized that that would require an extra set of hands, and coordinating that was a little bit harder than I had expected. So I'm not actually going to be able to do a playthrough, but that basically is a walkthrough of how the game works. It is very simple, but obviously with simplicity there is some deep strategy here about how you place your rooms, when you play your spells, and exactly which heroes you're luring into your dungeon versus which are going to other dungeons. It is very important to pay attention to what your opponent is doing, and it's sometimes very necessary to either try and steal some of the heroes that would normally go to his dungeon, or straight up deny him from getting those heroes, especially if he's getting close to 10 souls and he has a powerful dungeon. That's really it. I don't think there's more. Sorry about the quality of my voice, and I'm sorry about that big pause in the middle of the game there. I mean, in the middle of the review there. I do enjoy this game. I don't get to play it as often as I'd like to. I will say that you probably shouldn't play it with more than 4 players, even though you can. Because sometimes the turns will get relatively long, or the game will just feel watered down. I think it plays best with 2. It's just my opinion. Yeah, if you like this video, go ahead and check it out. Subscribe, like. Let me know what you think about the game. Let me know if I missed anything in the comments below. Or just talk at me about games. I check my comments as often as I can, and I try to answer back ASAP. Love to hear your thoughts. So, until next time, peace.